Hey everybody, Sean again from Excelsior. I have another build to show you today. This is a Korbanth K4, and this is a replica of Obi Kenobi's lightsaber from the original Star Wars, from A New Hope. So this lightsaber is something I've been working on for a while, and it is a heavily modified Korbanth K4 kit. So the first thing you're going to notice is this thing looks really beat up, and that's how it's supposed to be. The original prop, there's a long story behind this original prop, and I could probably make, an hour-long documentary on it. But if you're at all curious about it, the original prop for this lightsaber was cobbled together from a whole bunch of random different parts. And modern-day saber craftsmen, either in order to make a replica of this, they either have to hunt down the original parts, which is very hard and can be very expensive, or they just turn to manufacturers who replicate each of the individual parts. So a very well-known producer would be Roman's Empire, and he makes replicas of all the original pieces for this, which I'm going to go over in detail. And you can buy those parts as a kit and assemble it yourself. And or you can also buy, there's another manufacturer named Korbanth, and he makes a kit where he supplies all the parts for you to build the saber replica on your own. And that's what this is. This is a Korbanth K4, as it's called. And I have made a lot of modifications to it in order to try to make it more accurate to the original prop. So just a quick overview, the original prop was made of, like I said, a whole bunch of different things, but just starting at the pommel, it was made out of an Armitage Shanks sink knob. Moving up, it was made out of a booster from a machine gun, and above that it had a Graflex clamp. Graflex, I'm sure, is well known to many people who like building lightsabers, because the Graflex was the original lightsaber, right? That was Luke's. Well, they also used part of a Graflex to make Obi-Wan's for the original film, and this would be it. On the clamp, they used what is known as an Exactra, Texas Instruments Exactra bubble display. This was taken out of an old 70s calculator and just fit inside the clamp here. Now above that, they used some transistors. And just to show you what I'm talking about real quick, this is a reference photo taken from the Chronicles edition, a Star Wars book, and there's a whole bunch of pictures in that, and it had really nice pictures of the original props. So here you can see the transistors I'm talking about, and you could even make out, there's a little bit of the detail on them. It looks like it says N2, but I'm not exactly sure. It's a little hard to read. But anyway, beyond that, there is this whole section up here was originally a rifle grenade from like World War I, and this is one of the harder parts to find, especially in the correct profile, because you'll see like there's a lot of variety. The original grenades sometimes around this area would have a thicker profile. The wind vane and the neck area would have different profiles. So you're lucky enough you can find one at all, but especially if you find one that has the exact same profile as the one that was used for the original Obi-Wan prop. And then moving all the way up to the emitter, this, if you want to find an original part for this, this is the hardest piece of all. This was made from a balance pipe from an old Rolls-Royce Derwent jet engine, and you can imagine those are probably, that's pretty hard to find. And if you do find it, hopefully you've got some money and it's something you can invest in. But anyway, so yeah, if you can, there are some people who have managed to make all real parts replicas of this lightsaber, and those are always really fascinating to see pictures of and to read about, especially on the replica prop forum. That's where you're going to be your main source of information for this. But as far as, people who are on more of a budget, if you still want to make a replica of this, there are other options. Like I said, you can look at Korbanth, the Korbanth kit, or you can look at the Roman props Mark 1, which is right here. And this is really nice. This is definitely the most accurate that's available right now, and you can see, I'll compare it to the original, so you can see how close that is. This is still a work in progress for me. This has a crystal chamber inside of it from Rudy Pando, and that is something I'm still working on. So stay tuned for this one. This is coming up, hopefully later this year. But back to the Korbanth. So let me talk about now just some of the modifications I've done to this, just to make it more prop accurate, and then I'll get into the electronic specifications and all that stuff. So starting at the pommel, the first thing I did was I de-anodized it. It originally came with a nice clear anodizing, and I put it in a bath of a chemical known as greased lightning, and that removed all the anodizing in about half an hour. Once that was off, I washed it, cleaned it all up, and then I took out a polishing wheel and put it on my Dremel, and then I went all around it and I buffed it to a mirror shine. The reason I did that is because the original prop, remember the sync knob, was like a vacuum metallized plastic, so it looked chrome, and in order to get that high polish, that was the way to get that chrome sort of look on the aluminum here. So I did that. I also removed the D-ring that came with the K4 kit in order to add a more accurate D-ring. The first thing you're going to notice, at least according to this photo here, is the placement of the D-ring. Yeah, it should be more like back here. And I mean, it can certainly be displayed in that way, but it's hard to get the timing to get it to stop right there. So yeah, one little minor detail, but it's not a big deal to me. So yeah, the D-ring should be over here, but that's okay. Beyond that, let's move on up. So the next area would be the booster, and in order to, really wasn't anything I could do to accurize it. It's fairly close. The wind vanes, sorry, you know, with the area in between the flutes is maybe a little bit thick, at least compared to the Roman props version, which is a much closer replica of a real one. But it's still pretty close. So what I did to it was I weathered it, I banged on it a bit, and you know, wore it down on the edges to make it look more like the original, which you can see again in my reference photo here. You can see how beat up that thing is. Weathering this saber was really, that's what took most of the time, because in order to get an Obi-Wan A New Hope saber to look right, it's got to be weathered, and that is an art into itself. And I've seen really great weathering jobs, I've seen really bad ones, and usually the bad ones are where people just think they can just bang on it and say, oh, that looks like it's scratched up, now it's weathered. It's like, nah, you got to think more like an artist. You have to think, you're trying to recreate something, you're trying to look at, you know, what does the original look like? How can I create that effect? How can I create that texture? You need to think in different ways like that. And that's what I tried to do. So, you know, even little minor details, you know, there's some like speckling down here, some pitting, and it almost looks like pitting, but it's just a little bit of age, I think, on the sync knob. I tried to create that. There's a big scratch right here in between one of the pommel cubes, and I tried to see if I can get it catching the light. Well, it might be hard to see. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I tried to create a little scratch there. Just, you know, I love little details like that, so that's the kind of thing I like to take my time with and try to recreate. So I did that here as well with the booster. Now in between within the little grooves, I actually used some Fuller's Earth, just some nice reddish brown Fuller's Earth, to make it look like there's a little bit of rust in there. And that's how I handled that. So then moving on up to the clamp. The clamp required a lot of modification. You'll notice there are areas here that are really banged up and it looks like they have rust on them. There's no real rust on this. This is all just paint. And that's just an effect that I tried to create, because the original, once again, the original was very beat up. And you can see there's actually a ton of rust all over the clamp there. Now, I didn't quite go that far, because I did it first, but then it didn't look quite so good, so I removed a little bit of it, but tried to find a happy balance here. Okay, moving on up to the grenade section. This is where I started to make some more heavy-duty modifications, so you could say. So, first thing I did was I went to this area which originally on the Korbanth K4 has a different profile, right? There's a thick section right here, and what I did was I put this piece on my lathe and I actually cut it down and profiled it down so it would have a closer profile to the original prop. So that was the first thing I did there. Then I removed all the anodizing from this area. I left it down here, but I dipped it in the greased lightning all the way up to this point to remove the anodizing from this area. The reason I did that was so that I could then recolor it so it would all be in the same even color. And I used some aluminum black and in order to chemically darken it, and then after that I actually threw it in my dishwasher because the heat from the drying cycle, it sealed all that coloring in, and now this isn't going to wear off. This is really tough now. In between the grooves I used more Fuller's Earth to make it again look like rust is in there, and the effect looks really nice. And so that much for that section. Then up here around the wind vane area, this area was also one that saw some pretty decent modifications. Originally this area, the brass area, was much taller, which if you look at a stock Korbanth K4 kit, you'll see the emitter will stick up really high and it doesn't look right. It doesn't look like the original prop. So I actually just threw that on my lathe and I just trimmed that down so that the emitter piece, which right here is all solid, I trimmed it down so that that would fit closer and have a more acceptable profile to the original prop. And the last thing I used the lathe for, well, next to the last thing I used the lathe for, was I put a little chamfer here on this edge in order to make that look more like the original prop. So after that I chemically weathered the emitter. I sanded some of the, I guess it's a black oxide or some type of coloring that comes with it, that comes with the kit. Originally this piece is all black. I removed a lot of that in order to make it look more like the original. And yeah, that's pretty much that. This area I chemically darkened. And then this piece, the blade plug, is actually a piece I made custom on my lathe. Now, the blade plug, let me just go ahead and let's talk about that right now while we're on it. Okay, so just to back up a second here, the Korbanth K4, there's no set screw on the emitter. In order to remove the blade plug to take the blade out, you just spin this piece of the emitter off, and that's going to expose, yeah, there you go. It's going to expose your set screw. If I can get the camera to focus up. There we go. Okay. So there's your set screw, right? And I actually think, you know, the Roman props version has a very tiny set screw that's visible on the outside. You know what? I actually like Korbanth's solution here. I don't think you can get a better solution for an Obi-Wan A New Hope style emitter if you're trying to hide the set screw. I really like the way that he did this. So in order to get this out, you just take your Allen key here and loosen up the screw, and then, yeah, there we go. So then that just comes right out. And now this piece, this is one that I've made myself on my lathe. Now if you look on certain forums like the Rebel Armory, there are some folks who have done runs of blade plugs for the K4 and for the Roman Mark I, but considering that I have my own lathe, I was able just to make one myself, and so that's what I did. And I wasn't trying to go for super accuracy. I just wanted something that reflected fairly well the original prop, which if you look at some of the reference pictures in the emitter, it just looks like there's some kind of, it almost looks like a flashlight cone or reflector, and with this black hole in the middle of it. So that's basically what I did. I just laid this out and then filled the inside of the hole with some flat black paint. And this is inside of a 7/8 inch blade. So KR Sabers makes some really nice blade plugs, and kind of his design was my inspiration for this little one-off piece I made here to go with my build. So that's how that is. Let me, while I have the blade plug out, let me put in a demo blade, because I'm going to fire this up for you in a few minutes here, after I finish talking about some other features. Alright, so this is the process for doing this right now. What I'm doing is, you know, the same for putting in the full-size blade. You just pop it in there and put in your set screw, and then you spin this back in, and you want to make it tight. You can just hold onto the blade a little bit and twist it. You don't want you don't want to crank this at all. I mean, you don't want to crank on that too hard. This is definitely a show saber. This is not going to hold up to heavy dueling. That's not what it's designed to do. So yeah, so now we've got our demo blade in there. And now let me just talk about a couple of things here, because when I first built this, originally I was thinking about using a Neopixel Blade, because I've recently built a Graflex with one of those, and I'm a total convert. Like, tri-cree is nice, but Neopixel is absolutely the future, and it's so much brighter. You get any color you want, and it just looks so much more realistic than a tri-cree. So, okay, well, why didn't I put a Neopixel in here? Well, I wanted to make sure that the blade was removable, and in order for that to happen, the best connector for the Neopixel, well, the one that I like to use is the Plecter Pixel connector, and that adds so much thickness in here that I would have only had maybe a ½ inch or so of blade depth. So at that point, that's so little blade depth that you're talking about, having the blade fly out just from swinging it too hard. So I decided, maybe going with the traditional tri-cree on this build is going to be the better idea in order for it to hold up. And so that's what I did. And so that's something to think about. I'm sure there are people out there who are going to make K4s and Luke Return of the Jedi style sabers with thin necks that have Neopixels in them. And there are various ways. I have seen recently some very nice solutions as to how to go about that so you don't lose that blade depth. But that's a topic for another video. So anyway, let's just keep going here and I'll finish talking about this saber. So that basically covers the weathering, the modifications I made, and the really kind of trick thing about this hilt is the fact that it's got a crystal chamber. So let me fire this up. Okay, that's the boot up sound. This is Juansith's The Master Obi ANH sound font. And I'll turn this thing on for you. Zoom out a little bit. Okay. So the tri-cree is royal blue, blue, white. White is your flashlight clash. And I wanted to get a deeper royal blue color because that's what Obi-Wan's lightsaber looks like. And now, in order to expose the crystal chamber, you just have to unscrew your booster here, and there we go. So this, you can see, there's our crystal, and this is the Goth 3D Designs crystal chamber chassis. So this has a 2.1mm recharge jack right here. Underneath of that, inside is a 20mm speaker. It's actually the only speaker that'll fit inside of here without pretty serious modifications to the pommel. And it's definitely not the loudest speaker. Now, as far as the soundboard's concerned, we've got a Prizm in here, and this, in order to reach the SD card, you have to pull out on this, and you need tweezers to get the SD card out. And if you ever played Operation as a child, let's just put it this way, any of those skills you developed doing that, you're going to need them for this, because this is very tricky. This is definitely not a saber that you're going to want to be changing your sound fonts on very often. So let me show you how this is removed. You just push, you find it in there. You have to see it in order to be able to get it. But let me get this to focus here. It's going to be hard for me to show you because I need to get this in the light more, but if you can see it in there, you can reach it and you can pull it out, and there's your SD card. Now to get it back in, this is the trickier part. You just have to kind of line it up in there, and then there we go, and then push it back into place. Okay, so then when you're done making your modifications, you can push that back in, and then the pommel will fit back in. The whole pommel piece will fit back on there. You can screw it on and you're ready to go. Okay, now this crystal, this is actually what's called Tenzin Aura Quartz, and that I found, actually got some of these off of eBay, But I wanted, everybody uses clear crystals for crystal chamber reveals, it seems, because they're easy to find. You know, the clear quartz, you can get a whole big thing of those on Amazon for, I don't know, like $20. But for this build, I wanted to use a blue crystal. And if you want colored quartz crystals, you know, naturally you're going to find what's known as aura quartz. And aqua aura is pretty common. That's been around for a while. People have seen that for a while. Now the tanzine aura, this is a really pretty crystal. This is like a nice medium blue color, and that is something that that I wanted to use for this build. Okay, let me try it like this. There we go. It's a little bit better in focus now. Alright, so I got a whole bunch of these online, and you know, it's kind of fun just seeing what you can find, what you can collect. These are different kinds of ones that I have. This is actually a tangerine aura quartz, you know, if you're building, I don't know, an orange blade. So there's all kinds of neat things out there that you can find. These different kinds of crystals that you can locate and use in these kind of builds. Okay, so that pretty much covers it. Let's go over the features. The soundboard is a Prizm 5.1. And this has, let's see, it has an auxiliary switch for blaster deflection and lockup. Alright. Swing sounds are like that. Has clap sounds. Alright, so pretty standard for a Prizm. Okay, so yeah, I've pretty much covered everything I wanted to with this. It was a lot of fun to make this, especially with trying to weather it and make it look like the originals. You know, like this is what I love about this hobby. I like approaching each of these builds. I see them as works of art, and I like to, you know, the art is, what is the art? The art is the art of replication, and it's all about trying to get as close to the original as you can, and while also making it a functional piece. And that's what I try to do here, and you know, add a little bit of the extra sci-fi fantasy to it by adding the crystal chamber, which gives it a nice little extra feature. So yeah, there you go, folks. That's the Korbanth K4 with some accuracy mods and a whole lot of weathering. So thanks for watching this video. I'll have more up soon, and got some new exciting things planned for 2018. Actually, I'm going to be taking Excelsior sabers in a whole new direction. I'm actually developing a line of original style hilts that I'm going to be building and putting up for sale. So I will still be making replicas, but those will be just for, you know, entertainment for the channel and inspiration for people who are interested in doing it themselves. And I will put up tutorial videos on how to build and some of these sabers and how to make some of these accuracy mods yourself. And so yeah, stay tuned, and thank you very much. I'm almost at 100 subscribers now. Been around for almost a year on YouTube, and yeah, I'm really excited. So hopefully you guys will like the stuff I have coming up. Alright, so now we'll go outside, and as always, I'll give you a little demo, a live demo out back, so you can see this thing in action. Okay, thank you again for watching, and may the Force be with you.